This episode of Dorking Out is brought to you by Cruise Insurance. Looking to buy insurance, but you don't want your insurance to actually cover anything? Try Cruise Insurance. We don't have you covered.
And
Bob's Burgers. Our food is great. Our staff is full of surprises. Come let us meet you. M-E-A-T, meet you. Bob's Burgers has the biggest flavor in all the land. The flavor's so big. Bob's Burgers.
Houston, flight is go.
Myla, let's go.
From Assignment X, Amalgamated Storytelling, and thesoniashow.com, it's The Dorking Out Show with Christopher Allen Smith and Sonia Mansfield. Welcome to episode 56 of Dorking Out, a podcast for people who like to dork out about stories and the stories and culture that we love. That means movies and TV, books and podcasts, and everywhere else we find stories that interest us. This is the Game of Thrones Played by Apes edition. With me today is my co-host, professional writer, and author of The Sonia Show, a blog about Ferris Bueller fan fiction.
That is not what my blog is about.
Sonia Mansfield. Hey, Sonia.
Hey there.
Hey.
With me today is my co-host, Emmy award-winning filmmaker and nerd author, Christopher Allen Smith. In this week's episode, we talk about the return of Game of Thrones, which kicked off its penultimate season on Sunday night. Peter Brown from Assignment X joins us. In our second segment, we review the final installment in the Planet of the Apes movies. Maybe the final installment. War for the Planet of the Apes. Smith super loves this series.
I do.
Was he happy about how it ended? You'll
Somewhat.
have to listen and find out. And finally, we end our show with what we're dorking out about this week, which is basically just the Emmy nominations, which we somehow managed to turn political.
Actually,
We've got a...
it's an interesting discussion that you should listen for. That discussion takes a left turn. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
I get it. Left turn.
Oh, I didn't even get that. Oh, yeah, interesting. Oh, look at that.
Clever.
Kind of.
We've got a lot to talk about. So let's get this very long podcast started. Topic 1. Unless you've been attending a dinner party at House Frey, you know that Game of Thrones kicked off its 7th season on Sunday, the first of 7 new episodes. Next year, it's season 8, and that's the final season.
That's it.
And it's going to have 6 episodes. Every episode since the show first aired in 2011 has been leading up to these final 2 seasons.
2011.
Creators,
Jesus
I know,
Christ.
David Benioff and D.B. Weiss have masterfully set up the game board for what is sure to be an epic conclusion. Joining us to talk about Sunday night's Game of Thrones is Peter Brown from Assignment X. Thank you for joining us, Peter. Before
Thanks.
Smith gets in and starts talking, I want to know, what did you think?
Yes. Well, I am excited and overjoyed actually to have Game of Thrones back. As everybody knows, I'm a huge Game of Thrones nerd. I even have some fan fiction we'll probably get into.
You know I'm going to
concocted in my own mind. But I'm also a bit sad just because it is every episode is like one step closer to never having Game of Thrones again. So in that respect, I'm a little
sad.
like, oh, it's gonna Game of Thrones. But then I'm like, Game of Thrones. So I love it. It was like I was like on the edge of my seat when the episode came on. The episode was okay. It wasn't that action packed. And I guess I was thinking about it, and I guess the last 2 episodes of season 6 were so amazing and so violent and so crazy, like the Battle of the Bastards, and then Cersei blowing everybody up and all that stuff. That that you almost kind of feel like when you go into it that something's gonna happen. Okay, let's get to the Lannisters versus Daenerys and her army, and let's get going right away. But then you get this episode which is kind of like everybody kind of catches a breath. We kind of settle down. Everybody kind of puts the pieces on the puzzle board of where everybody's going to be, and that was okay. I didn't mind that. We had the little Anya wrecking the entire House Frey. That was fine.
That was pretty
cool.
epic.
We had the poo and food montage from Sam.
That was gross.
That
A little
very
gross.
That's one of the grossest things that's ever been on the show, and that's saying something.
Right.
Yeah, I know exactly. Me and my wife were saying the exact same thing. We were like, of all the things that made us like cringe, like that's what is good. So, but anyway, I'm super excited to have it back. I'm really excited.
I always feel like Game of Thrones always starts with like an episode where they're just setting it all back up again, and that the second episode is when like the action kicks back in. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And like I said, those last 2 episodes of season 6 were just so intense and so filled with so much gore and violence and craziness that you open the season with kind of one that has some violence at the beginning, and the rest of it's kind of just setting everybody in motion. You kind of like, oh, okay, I remember this is how Game of Thrones is as well. It is also a lot of set staging. So
yeah, that scene with Anya at
do we
Walder Frey's
do
house?
we mean Arya when we keep saying Anya?
I'm sorry. Yes, thank you.
It's not just you; it's also Peter, who supposedly
well,
is this huge Game of Thrones fan.
I'll blame Peter. I did that because Peter did that, and I was trying to be polite.
Not me. I'm going to point it out.
Super confused at first. I was like, "Is this a flashback?
Yeah,
is this something that happened?" Like, I'm such a dumb. Like, it didn't occur to me like what was happening right away. And the scene where she then comes across the guys all singing, which I was like, "Ugh, that guy." Like singing, of course. Like every time you turn on the radio, do you know who that is?
Yeah,
singer guy,
the Castle in the Clouds guy, right?
Yeah, it's like Ed Sheeran or something like that. Every time you turn on the radio, his songs are on. So I was like, God, I can't even watch Game of Thrones without like having to hear that dude sing. But that scene made me so nervous because she's a character that I really like and care about, and like part of me wants her to get her revenge, but the other part of me is so sad to see her become this cold-blooded murderer. And then to have her like kind of sit with these guys, and I start to worry like, oh my God, she's going to kill all of them. And like, it's such a weird thing. Cause I was like, I like her, but now I dread her. Because I was like, oh, I don't want to see her kill all these people for no reason.
Yeah, and you can almost see it in her own mind. She's kind of like saying, oh, okay, you have a wife and a new kid. Oh, you're very young, and so she's like kind of like weighing, do I kill these people even though they have all these personal kind of things they're telling her.
Right.
But
it's like a really weird. I mean, it's really impressive what they've done on the show and how they've taken this character from this like nice little girl who's a tomboy or whatever, and turned her basically into a cold-blooded murderer.
Yeah,
still like rooting for her, but then like dreading what she's gonna do next.
Right.
Well, it's interesting too because as far as she knows, all of her family's dead. As far as she knows, she's the last kind of Stark remaining. She doesn't know about like Jon Snow and anything or Bran or anybody else still being alive. Nobody knows about Bran, obviously, but so she's doing this as like kind of the last Stark revenge tour. Going around just killing whoever she can until she ends up on the chopping block herself.
Yeah. Smith, what did you think?
Well, I gotta say I'm getting more and more encouraged that we are really as much fun and as much excitement as we've gotten from Game of Thrones. I think we're getting more and more indications that this show really is becoming something special. And for a lot of people listening right now, they might be going, Game of Thrones has been one of the biggest, most loved shows on television since 2011. Smith, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, good job finally acknowledging that it's special, dummy.
Exactly. But what I mean is, with a lot of TV shows, there's kind of two modes. There's the creator has some big idea that they're telling the story from beginning to end. Like The Shield falls into that category, Breaking Bad falls into that category. And then there's shows that seem like a lot is going on, but really it's just the producers slamming down track as fast as they can as the train.
You just love to bash on The Walking Dead when Peter's on the show.
No, I was more thinking of Lost or something like that, where a lot of shows, they start out strong, they start out good, but they can't stick the landing, and it becomes intensely frustrating for people who've loved it for so long. This one, I think, with a lot of the things that you guys have mentioned, with Arya Stark's kind of she is this cold-blooded killer, but then she's also kind of using the morality that her father has taught her to possibly not just become this murdering machine. So she's not becoming the thing that the world has made her, kind of. Then you have Jon and Sansa talking about what it means to have real leadership in this world that just seems so bleak and hammering down on everyone. It's almost like hope is this kind of rebellious act in the world of Game of Thrones. And then you have Daenerys coming and her kind of, putting her pieces on the board and thinking she's making her final moves to take this over. It almost is though, like what we've talked about before, is all the brutality and all the cruelness of Game of Thrones has really been part of the message. And it's almost as though good people try to do good things in the world, and they may get hammered, and some of them may get killed off, and some of them may, lose their way. But if enough people still try to ride north, ride to the North Star through thick and thin, eventually some hope will come out of it. And I think we're seeing that hope. And I'm very heartened that there's going to be some meaningful resolution. That all the violence and depredation of the show is not just there for titillation factor. It really is baked into the theme of the story, and it's going to come to some meaningful ending. And if it does, this is going to be an incredibly satisfying series to watch from beginning to end. One of the things that's always been important to me when it comes to, and we'll talk about this with the Planet of the Apes review later and other things, is if you can have a great ending, you can get away with a lot of kind of missteps along the way.
Right.
And I feel like we're getting that meaningful ending, and I'm very excited about it. I feel like,
yeah. I was going to say, I feel like this show will reward people who go back and watch it a second time.
Right.
Because they've laid so many clues, so many character beats, so many things throughout. I just watched the season 6 finale, just kind of in prep for tonight's episode.
Right.
Sunday night's episode. And, I felt like I was so rewarded just watching that I was like, I really need to just start from the beginning.
Yeah.
Before season 8, maybe I need to try to start from the beginning. I think I'll be rewarded if I do.
I think you might be. And that is one thing that was interesting.
And that's a great show that could do that. If you could watch it again and it's almost like a whole new experience, knowing what you know instead of being bored because you're like, I know what's coming.
Right.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And I thought, one of the things I really liked about this episode is, especially in the middle seasons and in the kind of middle books of the series, is it seemed like the storytellers, George R.R. Martin or the Benioffs, were throwing so many characters in that it's like, do they know what they're doing? Do they know how this is all going to tie up and connect? And now it's, and with this, it's like, oh, you could see the threads of dragon, with the dragon glass that Sam found at the Citadel, how that is going to connect Jon and Daenerys pretty quickly. And then there were several interesting exchanges between Cersei and Jaime about either fearing each other or being threatened by each other or killing each other off. And they kept giving these looks, and you could definitely see and thematically that does, they have had this kind of poisonous love for each other. That when you think about it in a kind of a storytelling way, there would be something poetically interesting about Cersei being so beaten by the world and so embittered by her experiences that she decides to kill her last remaining loved one. Or, Jaime has been this kind of Han Solo, cynical on the outside, hoping for justice on the inside kind of guy, that you can see that he's trying not to care, but as the seasons go on, he's caring more and more. And, he's slayed one king. Maybe he could be a queen slayer also.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Or it could be or it could be something even worse, where they kind of go down together as, dragons set the whole place on fire. And that would be an interesting conclusion.
I think when we did the review of the season 6 finale, when we talked about it, that was kind of one of the things we all kind of agreed on, is that we thought that Jaime indeed was going to have to end up killing Cersei because she had become kind of the mad queen now.
Right.
And you could see that, like, in that finale of season 6, he, like, looked at her in fear. He was, like, fearful of her as what she had done.
Right.
And it kind of carried into this one, too, where he's kind of like, I don't really know kind of what you're going to do next. You're not even talking about your son who committed suicide.
Right.
Who are you,
Right. And I do have to say, one of the things I'm very satisfied with, and that I love when shows do this, and this one is doing it particularly well, is where characters reflect on the events that the audience has seen. There's that moment where Sansa is talking to Jon about what kind of king he's going to be, and she says, my father, wasn't smart enough. He didn't think things through, and he made a mistake and got killed. My brother made a mistake that got him killed. I need you to be smarter than them. I need you to be better. I need you to be... So it's kind of like she's learned. I love that. And you could see that she is really changed, and she's trying to impart... there was that great exchange where she's trying to impart that knowledge onto him, because in a weird way, he's kind of been removed from all this. Even though he's been murdered by his own men and risen from the dead, he's still kind of cloistered.
Right.
And she's been there. She saw Ned Stark fail.
Right.
She was around when the other king of the North died. I'm blanking on his name, but Robb Stark. Yeah, when Robb Stark failed. So she has that experience, and so she was even said, Jon, so should I listen to you? And she's like, would that be so bad?
Exactly.
And it's like, no, it wouldn't be bad. Listen to her. She knows what she's talking about.
That's right. And I love the fact that maybe he is the smartest, and he knows enough to know what he doesn't know, so he is going to avail himself of that knowledge. And who knows? Maybe Sansa will be the one sitting on the Iron Throne.
Look how much her character has changed over the years, too. I mean, she was a really obnoxious, teenage snob, basically.
Right.
In the first season, and now look at her.
Right.
It's really awesome. Yeah. What was your favorite moment of the new episode? Let's start with Peter.
My favorite moment of this episode was the Hound. For sure, because I forgot how much I love his character, and how just he has grown as well as a character over the seasons, and him interacting with the Lords of Light, and kind of coming to the conclusion of that these guys may not be all just full of bunk that he thought.
I loved it when he said that of course he would pair up with the people that worship fire.
Worship fire. I know. And I was saying, I forgot how much often the Game of Thrones makes me laugh, and that whole interaction with him and them was just full of comedy, and it was very refreshing. And he is an interesting character, and it'd be interesting to see where they take him, because he could be a big player in terms of fighting against kind of the White Walkers going forward, because he's such a brute and so good at what he does. So it'll be interesting to see.
I agree, and that is another one of the kind of the marks of the way that this show is letting its characters change, because he was this kind of thuggish brute only in it for himself, and the way that he dealt with the father and daughter that they found in the dead father and daughter, and he's taking care to bury them in the middle of winter and trying to say some nice words over their grave, even though he's kind of forgotten the
Yeah.
forgotten the prayer, and then he just says,
Right.
"I'm sorry you've died. You know, you deserve to live. You deserve better." And it's just this very touching. It's almost like his act of defiance is to claw out some sort of warmth and hope from this world that's been almost unrelentingly brutal to everyone, him especially. And
Yeah.
it was this show is hard, but it is not without humanity and compassion, even though sometimes it'll go several episodes without having that
Right.
humanity and compassion being visible. The fact that it's really kind of resurfacing at this point just makes me very happy and very, excited for where this is going.
At some point, he's going to cross paths with Arya again, and that's going to be quite the scene.
That would be.
And maybe his brother. That's a lot of the rumors, is that he's going to end up being the one to take out his own brother, who's now the zombie guy, the zombie bodyguard of Cersei.
Yeah.
What was your favorite moment, Sonia?
I had a couple of favorites, and they were probably the lighter moments, because I like it when shows or movies are dark and they give you just a little moment of levity. And I'm gonna mention that, of course, later when we're talking about War for the Planet of the Apes. But I liked it when I really want to get her name right. It's Lyanna Marmont, the little girl,
yeah.
and they were talking about training girls to fight.
Oh yes.
And she says, "I won't be knitting by the fire while the men fight." And I always love her character. I love that she will always stand for what's right and that she doesn't take anyone's crap, And she's like, "I don't need your permission to defend the North." I really like that scene. And I really liked when Brianna was training, what's his name? What's her squire's name? For Christ's sake, I can't remember any.
I know what you're talking about.
Like Pod, or I forget.
Yeah.
Anyway, she's training him to fight, and the wildling leader is "You're a lucky man."
As she's shoving him onto the ground.
Yeah, she knees him in the stomach and pushes him on the ground, and the dude's like, "You're so lucky."
And it's so funny that they haven't actually kind of pursued that at all, that whole relationship between the two. But it's just kind of that subtle uncomfortability.
Yeah, how he's the way he looks at her, he just wants to, what he wants, and the way he looks at her, she's like, "Ugh."
Right.
It's just so funny to me.
And he just doesn't care that she's like, ugh.
No, it probably just makes him like her more. Right. What was your favorite parts?
Well, no, I think it was when the Hound was digging those graves and kind of showing his tender side. So I think there were two parts. One was the Hound's moment of humanity, trying to pray over the graves of strangers that were destroyed by this brutal world. But two, that opening.
That was his fault.
What was that?
It was his fault.
Yeah.
True. Actually, you know what? I'm kind of forgetting
that. Not just by the hard, cold, cruel world. He didn't help.
That's true. And then that opening is just, and maybe that's every series has its moment that becomes its kind of signature moment. And when producers see fans react to a certain thing, they want to keep going back and back and back and giving it to them. With Game of Thrones, it seems to be not just one or two murders at a time, huge swaths of murders seems to happen. And usually you can tell these moments by the producers will do some moment and then the music of the show will kind of kick in, or almost like how the James Bond theme is used in James Bond movies.
Right.
He'll do something particularly cool and then the James Bond theme will kick in. Here, it was Arya murdering all the Freys and then the theme song kicks in. It's a very satisfying, the show is, and you could see the producers were almost kind of let's give them something good right out of the gate.
Yeah.
And then we'll kick it into the credits, and then we'll be off to the races. And it's very satisfying.
When you watch it on HBO Go or HBO Now, there's like a little thing after. Did you guys watch that? It's like
I did not watch that.
Oh, there's like a behind the episode or whatever. And the producer said that originally that wasn't the cold open, that something else was, but that they thought it just really was such a powerful they really how the performance of the guy who plays Walter Frey, like playing not really himself, but himself.
Right.
I guess really sold them on making, and it's such a big moment that she kills all these people. Right. It's how can you not make that the cold open, basically?
Right. It was spectacular. So, all right. One thing I wanted to hit on, before we close this out, is where do we think this is going? I know I am.
Well, where does Peter's fan fiction tell us it's going?
That's right.
So yes, my fan fiction is shaping up quite nicely. Actually, I think it certainly seems that Jon Snow is going to have to make his way south, and doing so, he will probably meet up with Daenerys, and they will probably form a union of some sort, and go from there, and then end up battling
not the
the White
union
Walkers
you
together.
Originally wanted. Are you disappointed?
Well, they may not be married, like I was predicting, but it's still Game of Thrones. They might still marry them off, even though they are related. We do know that they are related. So they might go that path. I don't think they will, but you never know.
Sonia, where do you think this is headed?
I think this is going to turn into kind of everybody against Cersei, and then everybody against walkers.
Actually, yeah, that actually. Well, here's the thing, and let me ask you this, because I think there's been one semi-popular. There's one main theory that's out there of the several, which is, and I don't necessarily believe this, but I think it is kind of would be an interesting place to take the show, which is the White Walkers as a metaphor for global warming, which is
okay.
Everybody is fighting against everybody else, while at the same time this existential threat to everyone is bearing down. They're getting the warnings, they're getting the notices, but nobody is really able to muster the effort to push them back and defeat them. So it would be a very dark but kind of poetic ending of all the humans can't get on the same page. They can't put their squabbling aside, and therefore the White Walkers come in and just mow them all down, and that's the end of the show. Westeros is populated by White Walkers, and it's over.
That ending bums me out.
That would bum me out. But now I'm wondering if it is a situation where Jon and Daenerys kind of meet. I don't think he's not the kind that's spoiling for a fight. I'm not sure he wants to sit on the Iron Throne. I could definitely see him swearing his allegiance to Daenerys. She's on the Iron Throne. He'll be King of the North with his loyalty to her, and then they both fight against the White Walkers or something like that.
Mm-hmm. I see that happening.
I mean, in broad strokes, I think that's it. I think it would be kind of interesting if we have to wait another year just to find out that what we're supposing will probably happen in this episode actually just plays out. But
I have a feeling that they're saving the White Walkers battle for the final season.
Yeah,
it's kind of what I'm guessing is that this season is going to focus more on the battle to take King's Landing from the Lannisters, and that's going to be kind of the main crux of what's happening. And then they'll sprinkle some White Walker stuff here and there along the way. And then the last season will be everybody rallying to fight against this overwhelming threat that has already kind of crossed the wall and is already here.
Right.
That's my opinion. Obviously, I could be wrong, but that's kind of how I see it kind of shaping up.
Almost like an Avengers type situation where they bring all the characters from all the different stories that we love together to fight them.
And I could even see the kind of the Lannisters getting on board with that too. Once Cersei has been kind of dealt with, maybe Jaime kind of says, "Okay, listen, there's this bigger threat. We'll go fight it as well." So,
right. Is there anything else that we have left to say on episode 1 of season 7 of Game of Thrones?
No, I'm wondering if we're going to need to do this every week.
Hey, want more Dorking Out?
Yep.
You can visit our website at dorkingoutshow.com.
You can.
And you can like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter.
On Twitter.
Do you listen to us on iTunes?
Yep.
It's cool.
It's cool.
We won't tell anyone.
Nope.
Please, take a few minutes out of your busy day of pretending to work while you watch cat videos to give us a review on iTunes.
Cat videos!
For some reason, iTunes really cares about reviews, and it helps us attract more listeners, and you want us to have more listeners and be popular and cool, don't you?
Yep.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
And now, on with the show.
Yeah. That brings us to our review of War for the Planet of the Apes and a larger discussion, despite some resistance, of what makes a great and not so great movie trilogy.
How can we make this segment longer?
There is nothing quite like a great movie trilogy. Why is that? And does this recent Planet of the Apes trilogy rank among them? War for the Planet of the Apes is the final movie in the prequel-ish trilogy of 8 movies that started with 2011's Rise of the Planet of the Apes and continued with the great 2014 Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Starring Andy Serkis as Caesar, the lab ape come Moses figure to a tribe of intelligent super apes living in California after a plague is wiped out 499 out of 500 people on Earth. And Woody Harrelson as a human soldier trying to clutch on to the last control humans have on Earth as a second wave of plague might be finishing off humans for good. War has been widely praised, and renewed talk of the Oscars needing to find a way to honor the work that Andy Serkis has done. I have to say, the performance in this movie is insane. The actual movie quality itself, we will be discussing here in a moment. But yeah, how are the Oscars going to honor movies or performances that are not CGI and they're not human? They're something in between. But we're not here to talk about technology. We're here to talk about story. Sonia, what do you think of War for the Planet of the Apes?
Well, first of all, I want to say something nice to you. Prepare yourself.
I am on guard. This seems like a ruse.
I want to thank you for telling me to watch these movies. I was ready to walk into War for the Planet of the Apes without seeing the other movies. I was just going to see it because you wanted to talk about it on the podcast, and I wasn't going to watch the other movies. And you said that I would be robbing myself of a really satisfying movie-going experience. And I think you were right.
Holy cow. First time for everything.
That's right. I watched Rise and I watched Dawn, and I think those movies are fine. Like, I didn't love them the way you love them, but I think they're fine. But I think it was important that I saw them before I saw War so that I could truly appreciate what War was trying to do in telling Caesar's story. And these movies, they really are Caesar's story. Like, he's the character that binds them all together. And I think the performance that Andy Serkis gives as Caesar is really, really amazing. Like, he's referred to it as like digital makeup that he has.
I have to agree.
Apparently, the visual effects community really hates that. They don't like it being referred to as that, according to my husband. But I think it's maybe a simple way to explain how he's able to give the performance. I think it's really, like, for me, it's just about that story from the little, the little monkey at the beginning to what we're seeing in this movie. And that story is really, really awesome. And I think you need to see all three movies to really appreciate it. So I'm really glad I did.
Right.
And as for the movie, I think this movie is the best of the three. It's the one I enjoyed this one the most. Now, this one was difficult to watch sometimes. The humans are pretty terrible.
Right.
Humans are awful. We're as bad as you think we can be. That's really what this movie is. But, and kind of with like everything that's going on in the world right now, it's kind of a bummer. It's almost like the opposite of Arrival. Like when I saw Arrival, I was like, oh, humanity all comes together and we do the right thing. And in this one's like, humanity's awful,
Right.
So that's a bummer. But I think it's a really great movie. Like, I really, really liked it because of that story, because I sat through those first two movies.
Great.
And I appreciated, I think the visual effects are amazing. At no point am I like, that looks totally fake. Like,
Right.
those look like real monkeys.
Right.
They
Yeah.
look like real monkeys.
Right.
And I really care about them. Like, I'm very touched by the things they do and the things they say. And I also, unlike the other two movies, I really appreciated that this movie had a little levity. Like, there's an ape. I think the ape is played by Steve Zahn.
Right. Yes.
Bad Ape, who is an ape who used to be, he's not a bad ape. He just calls himself Bad Ape, who lived in a zoo before the flu outbreak and all of that. And, he's not like super comical. He's just kind of a funny character, like
Right.
just the way he is, like, how they're all, all the apes, they're very serious. They're very serious apes. Sounds weird to say, but they are. They're very serious apes. And they're, they've always got like guns on their back and stuff like that. And when he shows up and he's wearing like that vest and that knit hat.
Like the ski parka? Right.
Yeah, like he looks like, yay, we're going to the snow. Like, it's just the funniest thing to me. It just
Right.
made me laugh out loud. It was just such a funny, random moment
Right.
that
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the movie. I thought it was really good. It sounds like maybe I liked it more than you,
I think you might have, but I
which
do want to
really
see it again.
surprises me because you are a big fan of the first two.
I am definitely a fan of the first two. The first one, and I've heard this discussion before, over the weekend as I saw this movie on Thursday night and I kind of been taking in some of the reviews and stuff. Since then,
I haven't read any reviews, but I know it's getting good reviews.
Oh yeah, it's getting insanely good reviews, and there has been kind of I have heard this from a couple critics that I like, which is this is very much like the Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy, which is the first one is good, a nice starter, a regular good movie. The second one is insanely good, and then it looks like there's a great movie, and then it looks like the reaction to this for some Apes fans that were almost really into the first two. This is almost kind of like the Dark Knight Rises, which is it's good, but it's just not at the level of the second movie.
So interesting because I think I enjoyed this one a lot more than the second one. I actually think I prefer the first one over the second one.
Which is really interesting because I have heard people that did not necessarily like the first two or were kind of lukewarm on the first two. This is the one, War, that they're really going nuts for. So it's kind of hitting. So
by the way, I didn't like Dark Knight Rises, so I don't really like that comparison.
No, I hear you. But I mean, the thing I think for me, the story in very broad, non-spoilery strokes is in the second movie, Caesar is learning to be a real leader and not just I'm telling all my ape comrades what to do because they're bowing down to me, but it's kind of like what does it really mean to make difficult choices when your own friends are giving you bad advice and leading you in wrong directions. How do you deal with that? And what do you do when you are confronted with awful choices that you cannot avoid? And that, that takes a toll as a leader on this. With this one, it's a little bit, I think that level of emotional complexity for Caesar is not quite there, because essentially it's him going after this group of humans who are pretty one-dimensional bad guys. We do get a little bit of explanation of why they're so hardened and why they're so cold, and it does make you could see people go in that direction if they had lived through the brutality that these people have lived through, 15 years into this horrible post-apocalyptic plague landscape. But for the purposes of kind of nuanced storytelling that I think the second one was just amazing at, it's just, Caesar good, Woody Harrelson bad, and they're fighting.
That's so funny, because the second one, I just thought the human beings, I didn't care about them at all.
Well, I don't.
In the second one, I didn't care about that story, and so every time they were on screen, I was like, yawn.
No, I get it, and that's the thing that I think is so interesting is, I think that is semi-intentional, because the real story is the story of Caesar and Kubo, not Kubo. Cuba, that's what it is. Caesar and Cuba and their connection. And the almost kind of like the battle for the soul of the Indian tribe. There is a lot of Native American noble savage iconography going on here. But anyway, the battle between them for the soul of the tribe is the heart of that movie, and how and the thing I thought was interesting about the second movie is the humans had two aspects. There was the we can work together in peace aspect, but then there's also the we're afraid and we're going to react with violence aspect, and how Caesar dealt with both of those aspects while trying to deal with his own, leadership struggles was just very rich and amazing. This was just, I'm gonna either kill those humans, or I am going to, I'm gonna get my people, and we're gonna get out of here and just leave humans behind.
Right.
It's a lot more, it's a lot less emotionally nuanced, but that is, in a weird way, my kind of criticism of this movie is because I liked the second one so much. It's kind of, I'm putting an unfair burden on what a summer tentpole blockbuster should be.
Now,
it could be, it's it could be that I like
this one the most because this is the only one I saw in the theater. So maybe that's, maybe, it's benefiting from that. I will say, for me though, in this one, Woody Harrelson's performance is kind of the weakest link.
It's
it's
all over the place.
It's too I've seen Apocalypse Now.
Right.
Guess who's seen Apocalypse Now, you guys? It was just a little too much of that. A little too much of almost like a Bond villain, too, where he starts monologuing. Now I'm going to tell you about my evil plan.
That's right.
A little too much of that.
Right.
And then, we're going to play some Jimi Hendrix so that you'll think of Vietnam.
That's right.
Just a little too much of that in the Woody Harrelson stuff for me that was kind of a turnoff. But I did really enjoy the movie.
I did. And I did think that they took that character in an interesting direction. So I hear what you're saying. And that's the thing, is that there's an awful lot about this movie I like. And I do have to step back and say, even though I know that we said we weren't really going to talk about the technology, the level of realism in this movie is... I was thinking about it in the theater, is these are the best...
Monkeys.
What was that?
They look like real monkeys.
Well, that's the thing, is they look like real emoting, acting monkeys. Yeah. But they don't look like, wow, that's really good CGI. There was a shot where Steven Zahn's character, Bad Monkey, was kind of digging out from this hole in the ground, and the way the light was hitting him, it was like there's no difference anymore between CGI,
It's
good,
kind of
this
creepy.
level of CGI work and realism. There's nothing left. There's no gap left to close. You know, in a lot of ways, I feel fully confident saying these, for what they're doing for the story, these special effects are the best in any movie I've seen. The
Yeah.
level
I would
of realism
100% agree with that.
and the level of storytelling weight they put on these artificial characters and how much weight these artificial characters are able to carry is just insane. You know, that's the thing is when Lucas in, you know, the 1990 was talking about how one day CGI characters will become as real as human characters, and you'll be able to tell a different type of storytelling and go in different creative directions than filmmakers have ever been able to go before. When things get this good, this is what he's talking about. This is a very emotional, very heartfelt, very empathetic. I mean, what else is interesting about these series of movies is the story. The first Rise of the Planet of the Apes starts out as a human story with a one character, Caesar, that we really identify with. Then it's kind of, the story is mainly with Caesar in the second one, but you still get a lot of humans and you kind of see where the humans are coming from. So it's kind of this multifaceted story. Here, 100% of the sympathy is on the monkeys.
Yes.
And it is just, I really would love, and people said this at the beginning of the last movie, you know, I think the beginning of the last movie was like 15 minutes of just monkeys talking.
Right.
I would love for a Planet of the Apes movie with no humans, where it is just apes trying to figure things out, trying to figure out what kind of society they're going to build. You know, we're not really getting into spoiler territory here, but
we don't want to give anything.
The end of this movie lets the creators go anywhere, and supposedly there's already been discussion about a Planet of the Apes 4. I hope it happens because this series has always been interesting, even the 1970s entries. A little bit more hit and miss than these, but there's really something special going on here with a big tentpole movie using this kind of multifaceted, multi-emotional, loud, exciting, quiet, heartbreaking filmmaking for a huge, big summer movie. It's just, this is a really good movie. I have this weird disappointment that it is not a great movie. But yeah. Did you have any more thoughts on?
I just want to say, like, how much I was touched by the relationship between Caesar and Maurice,
Yes.
the orangutan.
Yeah.
Like, I think it is such a great relationship and friendship, and how in any other, like, any movie where, like, these would be humans, like, this would be like, you know, Caesar's number one and this is his number two, you know,
Right.
like his most trusted confidant, his main man, the best man at his wedding, whatever. Like, their relationship is really special, and I like how they handle it and the trust that they have in each other and the way they talk to each other. And to me, and the fact that they're not real but they feel real is really just blows my mind. It's really awesome.
Yeah, it is crazy. So let me ask you this, because I'm going to use this as a jumping off point to a discussion about trilogies, because
Peter, you're still here, right?
That's right.
I am. Yeah.
Okay.
So, Sonia, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give War for the Planet of the Apes?
I would say it's like a 7.5, 8.
7.5, 8. Yeah, I think I'd be there. I think I'd maybe 7.5 for me, but I want to see it again. I have a suspicion it'll kind of crank up, and I want to use this as a jumping off point because, when growing up we were big fans of the Star Wars trilogy. Then
Yes.
in the early 2000s, we got the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which was another great set of movies. And I want to throw this idea by you and let you guys talk about it a little bit. Is I think the thing that's great about trilogies is they each movie tells a story in and of itself that is satisfying. But then when you connect them together and watch them all in kind of as one, they convey a larger, more satisfying story that begins in the first movie and ends at the end of the third movie that you can't get from just a series of like a James Bond like series where it's just entry after entry after entry after entry. Where all three movies connect together thematically, they connect together in a storytelling way, and when they all are good, it is almost kind of like the highest, or until Marvel came along, the highest form of movie storytelling.
Right.
That's kind of roughly what I like about trilogies. But what do you guys think makes a great trilogy? What does it for you, would you say?
Go for it, Peter.
So what makes a great trilogy? I think, you definitely have to have that strong beginning, because if you don't have a strong beginning, nobody's going to want to see anything that comes after it, right? So you have to have...
sorry, King Arthur.
That's great.
Yes, so, anything that comes after it, nobody's going to care or even want to see. So, you have to establish that first solid movie. Batman Begins, Star Wars, The Fellowship of the Ring, all those kinds of movies that start strong, and then you're like, you know what, I could see another movie, and I kind of want to see another movie of these same characters, of these same people, and what they're going to do next, and then you have a middle movie which tells a completely different story, but it's characters that you're familiar with, and it's connected somehow. It has maybe some flashbacks to the previous movie, has some ties to the previous movie, and then the last movie it kind of brings it all, the circle closed. It has you have your same characters that you've grown to love and appreciate, and yet you're telling a different story, but it has maybe a lot of those elements from the first two movies that are now coming to a conclusion in the last movie. And so in my mind, that's what makes it a great trilogy, is you have kind of a layer or a thread that continues throughout the three movies, and you kind of sum it all up at the end. But like you said, Chris, are telling distinct different stories in each movie, but that they're connected.
See, that's why the original Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, especially Toy Story. I could go on and on about how much I love Toy Story, or like the original the Godfather trilogy. The original, not the reboot, not the Godfather reboot, but the original trilogy.
It's
like
coming.
They're telling, those smaller stories, those three separate smaller stories, and then like the overall big story.
Yeah. And
that's why then something like, say, I wrote in the notes here, Indiana Jones. Like, I think separately, those first three Indiana Jones, like Raiders of the Lost Ark is one of my all-time favorite movies. Mm-hmm. But like technically together, like it's not really like a yay trilogy. It's not that kind of trilogy. It's like three separate like movies.
Right.
That just happen. It's more like a James Bond series.
Right.
Because there isn't that story that connects them necessarily from beginning to end.
But there are elements in each of those Indiana Jones movies that are kind of play to the other movies, like in the final.
Well, that's true of Bond though too, and Bond
that's true.
Yeah.
Right. But like in the final Indiana Jones movie of the trilogy, they see the picture on the wall of the Ark, and he's like, "Are you sure that's the Lost Ark?" And Indiana goes, "I'm pretty sure."
Right.
It's like a callback to the original movie. So there's threads in there still. Even
but I don't think it's telling like a story about the character though necessarily from beginning to end.
Yeah.
Whereas like something like Toy Story is telling like Woody's story from beginning to, well, a new beginning, but with like all of his time with Andy. Or Star Wars is really Darth Vader's story from Lord of the Rings, and like Indiana Jones isn't really telling that kind of story.
I would throw Mad Max in there too as one, because you kind of have his beginning, is kind of the middle, and then we kind of see the end, which is him kind of still being this loner, but he's still helping people out as it goes, and from the person he was at the very beginning, he's changed so much during that time, and so I would throw that in there as well.
Well, you know what? I'm looking at these lists. So what we did before the show is we kind of made a list of trilogies. There's the original, there's the sequel trilogy, or the original series of Star Wars movies, Lord of the Rings, Toy Story. Now we mentioned Mad Max, Dark Knight, Back to the Future. The first three Bourne movies, I think, do hang together as a distinct trilogy, with all the other movies after it just kind of being meaningless add-ons. There's the Dollars trilogy, Clint Eastwood's Western trilogy, right. Godfather, Matrix, which we'll get back to in a second. Looking over this, I think that one of the interesting aspects of these, especially with the original Star Wars trilogy and with the Godfather trilogy, is the weaker entries of the series in a way are made better by the fact that they connect together so tightly with other better movies. I think more than a few people think Return of the Jedi is the weakest of the original Star Wars movies, but because it is paying off on so many threads laid down in the originals, it is kind of elevated as a film and a satisfying cinematic experience by being so tightly connected. And I would definitely say, I think I'm a little bit of a cinephile blasphemer in saying this, the Godfather movies needed that last movie to finish Michael's story. Him, being somebody that wanted to get out of crime, descending into the darkness, and then trying to get out, but having to pay the price of the compromises that he made. That's all that third movie was about. For all of its flaws, it was a really good movie that thematically was necessary to finish that story. But now that I'm looking at these, I'm wondering if, on the whole, movie for movie, and I'm surprised to say this, if Toy Story isn't the best trilogy out there. Even though,
I'm not surprised by that. As someone who's been watching Toy Story a lot the last year or so with my son, that movie, all of them, stand the test of time, and they tie together so beautifully. And it's not just Woody. Like, a lot of these characters, their stories evolve, and they're telling a lot of stories here. There's Andy's story. There's the boy who owns all these toys. There's Woody. There's Buzz. There's Jessie. Like, there's a lot of stories going on here, and they tie them up in a really emotional climax in Toy Story 3 that makes me bawl every time. And no joke, I've seen this movie a lot in the last year with my son, and still I'm like, I have to leave the room because I'm going to cry again every time that stuff comes up.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's
a really good series. I mean, I think the Lord of the Rings movies would also, they absolutely are awesome from beginning to end.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, that would be my pinnacle kind of trilogy, is the Lord of the Rings, because you have the introduction of the movie where you learn all these characters, and then you get to see them and their horrific circumstances that they have, to overcome, and a lot of them don't make it, and you can see some of the characters that are introduced, die along the way, and it's definitely a powerful trilogy, and it finishes strong, and it finishes powerful and emotional.
Right.
Peter super loves the third Matrix movie, though.
So,
so I don't know if you can trust Peter.
Let's talk a little bit about the Matrix.
Lies.
It is a lie, Peter. Nobody likes that movie.
You know what? I think I am one of the only defenders of the Matrix as a trilogy. However,
you are.
I completely understand why those movies drive people up the wall. I think it's one of those things where it's kind of like the friend at the party that's singing in an annoying voice, and they're driving everyone out of the party, but for some reason the way they're doing it is just tickling my funny bone, so I'm laughing my head off even while they're ruining the party. I really like how just thick-headed and just
I think the first Matrix is amazing.
It is.
I can't tell you anything about 2 and 3. I have almost completely forgotten those. All I know is I saw them and I didn't like them at all.
Now that I think about this, I just realized this. The thing that one of my favorite movie moments happened with the second Matrix movie, where we're watching. It was hyped like few movies at that point were hyped. It comes out. It's good, but in the second half of that movie, I think people could kind of feel it going in a very different direction than people were expecting with how good the first movie was. And then when Neo goes in and starts talking to the white-bearded architect in that room, and it feels like a half an hour of philosophy 101 going at each other. And I remember looking back in this packed movie theater and seeing, teenagers, this mainly teenagers or whatever, just gobsmacked. Like they can't believe what they're watching. It's almost a little bit like this new Twin Peaks. It's like people are sitting down. They're very hopeful. It's been hyped. They've been waiting a long time for this thing to finally arrive. And when it arrives, what the hell are we looking at? But yeah, no, I know it's great. But
well,
Peter, what do you think?
Yeah.
Well, so the issue I have with the Matrix is that the original movie is so good and can be is such a good standalone movie that there was no need to have two movies after it. There was no need. I understand studios are trying to milk everything they possibly can out of everything, but it's best sometimes just to leave things alone. And this is definitely one of those cases where you should have left it alone. I love the original Matrix movie. It's a great movie from start to finish. It has a lot of twists and turns. It takes you. When I first saw it, I had no idea what to expect, and like that helped me like the movie so much better. And I didn't know it was like a science fiction movie. I didn't know it was all these different ideas that were being tossed out. And then to take it and then to kind of flush everything that from that first movie down the toilet, and have a underground rave and all these different things that are going on. It just doesn't make any sense, and it just like almost you sacrifice the original movie because of that, and that brings the original Matrix down a few pegs because you have these two other movies that are so underperforming and underwhelming, in my opinion.
I agree, and as you were talking, I just put another trilogy on the list, which is the Alien trilogy. Even though they've made several movies, those original 3 movies kind of did tell the story of Ripley from beginning to a kind of end. And the third movie was such a left turn train wreck that I think you're right. By making more and more bad movies in a series, you really can do damage. Because when people talk about great series or great trilogies, Alien isn't anywhere near the top of the list because so many bad entries have been added to it.
Exactly.
People still, thankfully, they're still able to appreciate the original Alien and Aliens. I feel like Aliens has kind of gotten lost a little bit because of that, which I think is one of the greatest action movies ever made. But yeah, I think there is a definite risk of doing damage to the original movie by, the Bourne movies might be like that a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
There are 5 Bourne movies now, and only 3 of them are good.
Yeah, and luckily, like the Lord of the Rings was able to withstand the badness of the Hobbit.
Right.
So because the Lord of the Rings is its own kind of character, the only character that crosses over is Gandalf, I believe. Well, in Schmeagol, right?
And
so
Legolas kind of.
Oh, Legolas.
But I agree 100% with what you're saying.
Yeah. they have all new characters in that movie. So Lord of the Rings kind of can stand up to it because it's completely different characters in The Hobbit versus Lord of the Rings for the most part. And I consider The Hobbit to be a bad trilogy because there's no need to take one book and convert it into 3 movies. There's no reason. They could have. There's so much dead space in those movies that's ridiculous. So,
right.
Anyway,
so is there anything else that we have to talk about when it comes to great movie trilogies?
What about the original Spider-Man trilogy with Tobey Maguire?
All right.
Now now I know obviously the third movie is kind of a train wreck, but the first 2 are actually really good, and they do kind of carry over from what we saw in the first movie, the second movie, and the second movie is better than the first. So, what about that one?
I would give it to you, and I think that might be another Alien type situation where the way the studio handled it did so much damage that that's why it kind of slips out of our minds when we think about it. Because it could be, maybe this is just my own bias. I thought that first one was fine. It was okay. The second one I really liked, and the third one was quite forgettable, even though in a weird way I didn't dislike it as much as I think most other people did. But yeah, I think it. And then
I think maybe that trilogy gets diluted because there were 2 other Spider-Man movies after it, and then there's the new one. So now there's an additional 3 other movies out there that people have to compare it to. But I think as at the time it was a decent enough trilogy that I think it should be considered.
Let me ask you guys this: now that I'm thinking about it, now that we're looking at this. Are there any major trilogies we're missing?
Iron Man?
That was my point. We haven't mentioned Iron Man. We haven't mentioned Captain America. We haven't mentioned Thor. We haven't mentioned any of these, and I'm wondering is
you know why? Because those are just they're like part of like a Marvel universe that they don't feel like a trilogy.
I agree.
They feel like an episode.
I agree, which is really funny. When I was watching Spider-Man Homecoming, I was, they had that cool intro. Then they had the Marvel.
Be careful with the
logo.
Don't spoil anything.
No.
For me.
I'm not spoiling anything.
Okay.
Then they have the Marvel logo, and this is a logo that they've been using for the last couple movies, where it's a very involved. It shows kind of a lot of iconography from the first 10 years of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and then the camera slowly pulls back and it says Marvel Studios. And that is a 30-second logo. That version is 30 seconds, which is the length of time for a lot of modern television intros. And it just hit me, I'm sure the last person to say this, that is the name of the show. Marvel Studios is the name of this show. Spider-Man Homecoming is the name of the episode.
Right.
And I think that says it all for why these, the Iron Man trilogy, that could be an interesting way to go, but I don't think you can really understand the depths of that character, and you definitely can't understand all the interesting nuances in the Captain America trilogy without having seen 5 or 6 other movies. So, yeah.
Well, I'd like to revisit this trilogy conversation after Pitch Perfect 3 comes out.
Which I have to see Pitch Perfect 1. Having watched the previews to Pitch Perfect 3 several times in the last couple weeks, I suspect my cinematic experience will not be as rich and rewarding as Sonia's cinematic experience. Having watched.
I don't know if you know this, Peter, but Smith and I did a movie swap.
That's right.
Where
I do.
Yeah. So yes. he had to watch Bring It On, and now he has to watch Pitch Perfect.
That's right. So now I gotta.
You're welcome.
No, we're gonna do another movie swap, and I'm gonna get my revenge.
We'll see.
I have got to figure out maybe one of the Saw movies.
You be careful.
Yeah.
You're gonna make her watch Jim Cotta, huh?
That
No.
would be awesome.
That is, I am not gonna. No, that is a very.
That would be if Peter was in the movie swap.
Yeah. Don't protest too much. Oh, don't make me watch Gymkhana, she says, wanting to watch Gymkhana the whole time.
Now I'm totally gonna watch Gymkhana when we're done recording this.
That's right. So, all right.
I have it on DVD if you need to borrow it.
Peter,
Yeah, maybe I do.
I'm sure you do. Peter, do you have anything else that you would like to say about movie trilogies in any
no.
way, shape, or form? Sonia Mansfield, any interesting thoughts?
Never.
You know what I just realized?
What?
You could watch the Mad Max movies and the Planet of the Apes movies together as kind of one huge, there's nothing stopping the Mad Max movies from actually happening within the world of Planet of the Apes.
That's true.
I'm so bummed. I want to see the movie where Caesar and Furiosa team up.
Exactly. Like you know what it is? There's somehow you could throw Waterworld in there too.
Looking forward to the Mad Apes trilogy.
Where Mad Max somehow gets on the Exxon Valdez that Dennis Hopper's tooling around in Waterworld, goes over to California and runs into Caesar. That could happen. Anyway, sorry, I just got off on a total tangent there. Anyway, thanks for joining us, Peter. Now we're on to what we're dorking out about.
And that brings us to what we're dorking out about this week, which is mainly the Emmy nominations. We keep hearing that we're in the platinum age of television, but when it comes to the Emmy nominations, it's kind of just TV as usual. The Emmys seem to take like a giant leap forward last year, nominating like criminally overlooked shows like The Americans and giving Emmy awards to the leads of Orphan Black and Mr. Robot. Neither of them are nominated this year. Neither is The Americans. Instead, the Emmys took 2 steps back this year, and they're kind of nominating House of Cards, Modern Family, honoring quote-unquote movie stars like Anthony Hopkins and Kevin Spacey and Liv Schreiber for their TV work, even though the performances are maybe not the best TV has to offer. Westworld is nominated for Best Drama, and I don't know if it really deserved to be there. I feel like maybe it's more of the result of like HBO's big marketing push to get it nominated.
Wow, there's a lot of editorializing going on in this intro.
Yeah,
it's almost as though I'm doing this introduction. Continue.
I'm not even going to go on and on about how much I hate that Sherlock is nominated for anything because I thought it was super terrible. There are some bright spots, and I'll throw out a couple right now. I love that A Handmaid's Tale is nominated for a lot of stuff. I feel like it deserves all of those things. Atlanta, Stranger Things, The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. I was happy to see so many Saturday Night Live actresses nominated for supporting actress. Smith, what did you think?
I'm actually kind of satisfied with this, but I've heard that this has turned into a running joke is that we are going to talk about the quality of The Americans having never seen it and probably never having seen it during the entire run of this podcast. But I heard that it actually kind of went down a little bit in quality this last year. I tend to agree with you.
Wouldn't you say the same about, say, House of Cards?
Oh, definitely. I would definitely say about House of Cards.
Modern Family.
Modern Family, I'm with you. I am happy to see Atlanta in there, Blackish in there, Master of None in there. So there's enough good in the comedy series that it's like, all right, it's not dominated by why is this show still being nominated type shows. Right. It's just, Modern Family, it's the Modern Family memorial slot, I guess.
But that's okay.
No, it's not. But the fact that it's one.
Like if you want to nominate an ABC sitcom, how about Speechless or, something else, something good?
Maybe. No, I hear you. I'm saying I'm quibbling with that one, but it's not like the Oscars where it's like, why are these 5 films nominated over these other 3 that didn't even get a chance? It's just one slot. The Best Actress, all of those performances seem pretty good, except for Robin Wright. Okay, let me ask you this.
I don't watch House of Cards, so I can't.
Have you ever seen? Okay, I'm not sure she's acting. I know that she is acting. And I'm not saying that the character in House of Cards that Robin Wright plays is Robin Wright. What I'm saying is saying everything in one sinister monotone. I don't know. I guess that's technically a performance, but there's not a lot of humanity there that I'm saying.
Right.
I kind of, Better Call Saul, like it. Or I really like it.
Let me ask you watch Better Call Saul, so you're a big fan. From what I understand, Michael McKean not being nominated is a really big snub. Is that correct?
Yes, that is definitely true. Michael McKean should be winning this category. It's you know what it is? I think
because then you look at supporting actor in a drama series, which is where I assume he would be, and it's like, why is Mandy Patinkin nominated for Homeland again? Like, why is Homeland nominated for anything?
Yeah.
What about Michael Kelly in House of Cards? Should he be in there?
I don't know. I have completely dumped House of Cards. I think but you know what I think it is? I think because the limited series, I think, is where the most interesting stuff in television is going on. And so what we have here is Big Little Lies, Fargo, Feud, The Night Of, all of which I've seen, Genius on National Geographic I haven't seen, but I'm now seeing the company that it's keeping in this limited series entry.
This is a really good list.
This is a fantastic list, and I think this is I'm supposed to be rustling up some kind of outrage at also at shows that are not earning their slots or actors that are not earning their slots. But I don't know. For each of these...
I'm not outraged. Yeah. I don't lose sleep over this.
Yeah, I'm not just talking about you. I'm talking about other people reacting on the internet.
See a lot of stuff where they were like, if we're in the platinum age of TV, how about you start nominating 10 shows instead of like 7?
Yeah.
And I'm like, or how about you just stop nominating crap like Modern Family?
Yeah.
And like put a really good show there.
Yeah.
It's not that Modern Family didn't have its time. It totally did.
Definitely. It's just, yeah,
its time is up. But there's a lot of good stuff here. I mean, it's great to see like Ewan McGregor's nominated, Riz Ahmed for The Night Of, right. John Turturro for The Night Of, stuff from, Reese Witherspoon, Nicole Kidman from Big Little Lies. Nicole Kidman's amazing in Big Little Lies.
Yeah.
That's a tough category.
Yeah.
Limited series actress, you got Carrie Coon from Fargo, Felicity Huffman from American Crime, Nicole Kidman, Big Little Lies, Jessica Lange for Feud, Susan Sarandon for Feud, and Reese Witherspoon for Big Little Lies. I mean,
that's
tough.
That's it.
By the way, I never watched The Leftovers. Did you ever watch The Leftovers?
No, I didn't.
People
I ejected.
Who watch The Leftovers feel like they've been rewarded by a really good final season, and I read quite a few things that people felt like that was a snub.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, and that could be a thing, because for me, the first season of Leftovers was kind of hit and miss and very kind of nihilistic for the sake of nihilism, and I know that there was a lot of criticism of it, and it seems as though they've kind of changed that in subsequent seasons, but by that point had stopped caring. So yeah, at some point I will probably circle back to The Leftovers because I hear it's really good. Yeah.
Did anything else strike your fancy?
No, maybe, you know what it is? I'm looking at the Talk and Variety series, and I guess it's, Full Frontal's nominated, great. Jimmy Kimmel, fine. John Oliver, expected. James Corden, Bill Maher, I think I'm past all of these series. I think I'm. Well, you know what? I think I'm done with late night TV and the preaching to the choir aspect of it.
I watched Samantha Bee. find her very therapeutic. I watch Colbert only in like chunks, like, online, like here's something you should watch, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I just think it's interesting that once Jon Stewart left The Daily Show, that's been it for The Daily Show.
Yeah.
Like 2 years in a row.
Well, I that's definitely true, and I think for me, this was beginning, and The Daily Show really came into its own. Correct me if I'm wrong with this timeline. Is George Bush got elected, and there was kind of a need for an almost kind of Rush Limbaugh of the left to kind of speak about what's going on from a left point of view, and be funny and trenchant and cutting and highlight different things to,
right,
using satire and everything. And it was, I think, for a couple of years there, it was really good at what it did, and it was balanced enough that it wasn't just kind of hatchet manning. But I think by the end of his run, he was getting predictable, and I think that's why I've fallen off with Stephen Colbert. I think that's why I've fallen off with Samantha Bee. It's just, if I know what they're going to say before I even watch the show, there's kind of not a lot of point in watching the show. And I don't, it's almost as though they're showing this weird kind of glee in watching the fire burn that I am just,
I don't take it as that at all. I find it to be actually really therapeutic to watch, as they kind of voice how I feel. And I'm like, yes, like a little, like, yes, I feel that way too. That is frustrating.
Yeah. I think, keep going.
Well, I was just actually going to bring up something else totally random as I was scrolling through nominations. I think it's really weird how people can, like, in their quest to, like, win awards, like, push themselves into certain categories. Mm-hmm. So, like, Black Mirror is nominated for television movie.
Oh, yes.
For like one episode in particular. And I'm like, well, that's not a TV movie. Yeah. You're a TV. If anything, you could say, you might be able to say you're a limited series.
That's right. Yeah.
You're not a TV movie.
That is the gamesmanship that I will never talk anyone down about, to try to figure out where to enter your thing into the Emmys to get the best shot at an award.
I think it's really fascinating so that's in the television movie category. Used to be like one of those categories where, like, I don't know, pretty much like all the things you see now in limited series used to be like the TV movie category. Remember when limited series was like
the miniseries?
They're never going to make miniseries again. They should just get rid of that category. Now it's like a thing. TV movies used to be like the top, like, you guys, Holly Hunter made a TV movie and it's amazing. Right. That sort of thing. It would be nominated. Now you look at this category and it's like Black Mirror, which it's basically an episode of Black Mirror is nominated. And it's a Dolly Parton Christmas special.
Now, is that a Christmas special or is that an actual movie?
It must be a movie of some sort, but come on. It's like it's a Christmas special.
Look at
movie.
you! Oh, but come on, it's Dolly Parton. Come on, how good can it be? Look at your San Francisco condescension. Come down on Dolly Parton and her tiny mountain town people.
I love Dolly Parton because I am a red-blooded American. Do you remember when Dolly Parton showed up at the Golden Globes and everyone lost their mind?
I don't.
Because Dolly Parton was there?
No.
Everyone loves Dolly Parton.
I know.
I love her. I'm just saying, it's like Dolly Parton Christmases of many colors, circle of love. Like, come on.
Listen to the way you say it. Listen to the, come on. How good can this be? Come on.
I'm just saying, it's probably a really Christmas movie. That's all I'm saying.
I know. I just love teasing you about it.
And then it's this, like, horrible Sherlock movie.
Agreed.
Which, technically probably should fall under limited series.
Agreed.
And then the show movie Wizard of Lies, which I actually haven't seen, but
it's good. It's it's a Barry Levinson movie. There was a time where I went to the movies every time Barry Levinson put out a new movie, and this one was good. It was I'm
saying, like, the TV movie category is not bringing in the
I
the
agree.
big stuff.
I agree.
That's all.
There's two definite suspect entries in that category that should be in the series. So yeah, there's two. Yeah, no, there's some gamesmanship. What I find it from the creator's point of view, I see why they're doing this. I see why they're giving this a shot. My heart is with them in trying to game the system.
Yeah.
From the Emmy rulemaker's point of view, why did they let this happen? These are obviously parts of series. There's definitely some big loophole that I am hoping that they are going to close by next year. Because this is there's gamesmanship and then there's gamesmanship. I think that's how, wasn't Orange is the New Black was put out as a comedy or something?
Yeah.
And having only seen half of one episode, I am not sure that is a descriptor that I would use.
It is not a comedy.
But
I don't think it is.
But yeah, I think going back to our discussion about late night, looking at this listing, and I think that's what it is. Is when I'm coming to a series like that, I don't want them to just tell me what I think. I don't want them to just mirror my frustration. I want them to show me a way or show me something from a different point of view, or expand my, break me out of what might be the thing that I'm focused on. And I'm looking at all these, and all of them, or all of the ones I've seen, are kind of in a, this is our box, and we are in our box.
See,
and we are staying in our box.
I think the Colbert Report, when it was on the air,
Right.
I think Full Frontal Now and Last Week Tonight, all three of those shows, and Colbert Report when it was on, they're really good at like, here's something that's happening. This is frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
You're frustrated. I'm frustrated. Here's something you can do to help. I think the Colbert Report in particular, was really good at this, like, because it really could have just been like another Daily Show, but it was really it could be very like activist like.
Yeah.
And I think Full Frontal and Last Week Tonight are like that too. Like, they're not just like, I'm preaching to you and I'm going to throw some jokes in there.
Yeah.
Like, there is like a component of, and here's something you can do.
Yeah.
That I always like, that, I usually do because it makes me feel better.
Yeah. Well, I hear what you're saying, and I do understand that part about the activism. I think your discussion of Colbert is kind of highlighting the trouble that I'm having with his new show.
That's missing with his show now. Yeah.
Which is, when he used to play his character, is sometimes the brilliance of that character is sometimes he could come from the right in kind of a Bill O'Reilly type way and make fun of the right. But then sometimes he could come from the right with some things that might actually make a little bit of sense. And for a mainly liberal audience for that show, they would be kind of stopped short. It's like, oh, wait a minute, this buffoonish character is actually making a point. What the hell's going on here? So he would be able to come things from the left and the right and always kind of keep things off balance, and show people that maybe the way that they're used to thinking, or the expectations that they have about how people in the world act all the time, or people that are on the other side of the political aisle, for example, we're falling into kind of too much tribalism. And the main thing that I would hit on with there is the way that he talked about campaign finance reform and the absurdity of the campaign laws, and having his own PAC and everything. I mean, that was a problem for everyone, and I think he showed it in a very interesting way that this is a problem for everyone. Now he is just, I'm going to take a hammer to the right, which, he should take a hammer to the right, but it's lost that kind of search for the middle ground aspect of it that I'm missing, I guess, and I just wish that, and maybe we're just going to have to go through.
I think we could, this is going to it could turn into a whole other discussion that you probably don't want to have, where about like,
let's talk about it.
No, just like what's happening now is like, there's more going on than like we need to find the middle ground. Like there's some really scary stuff
Right.
happening right now, and I think a lot of people are really scared
Right.
and really frustrated. And so I think he's speaking to that, and I think a lot of these shows are. I think Jimmy Kimmel has. Samantha Bee certainly does. John Oliver does. You know, and I think they're kind of, you know, you're saying they're preaching to the choir. Maybe they are, but I don't think they are, because I think there is like, see, we're going to get into a whole thing where
that's okay.
There is like a whole,
a little bit.
All right, there's a whole part of like Trump's base that feels like they're shunned by Hollywood, that like Hollywood doesn't reflect their values and they're not represented on like TV and in movies and stuff. And that's true. And I think these shows they're really left. Like they're really liberal. They really are.
Yeah.
You know, and it's because like there isn't like no middle ground with Trump. There is like he's like
no,
I don't want to swear.
No, I hear you. There's no middle ground with Trump.
But he's bananas.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I agree. There's no middle ground with Trump, but there is a middle ground with where this country needs to go. And the reason I'm bringing that up here, and I think this is why this category
our
discussion
Emmy discussion has turned into something totally different.
What I think that's interesting is the thing that you said about there are a lot of people that are frustrated and there are a lot of people that are scared. You know, the sentence or the codicil of that sentence that was left unsaid is on the left, which I agree. And I think what we've seen by the people that were on the right, listening to Rush, listening to Sean Hannity, listening to these other entertainment outlets, is they were frustrated, they were scared, and hold on. And what people do when they're frustrated and scared is not usually constructive, and is not usually. Being frustrated and scared is not usually the thing that leads you to the best outcome. And I'm afraid with this list of all leftist shows is the left is going to, for good reasons and for righteous reasons, getting whipped up into this self-defeating freak out that is not going to help them or us, you know, because eventually, you know, like with every war, you know, the both sides keep pounding on each other, but eventually, in order for the war to end, they got to stop the pounding and start having difficult, hard, embittering discussions. You know, you don't make peace with your friends, you make peace with your enemies. And if we're going to get out of this current era, I think we gotta figure out some way to talk, and I guess that's what maybe that's why this struck a nerve with me, is like with the Tonight Show way back when there was a kind of center of the country that the Tonight Show kind of everybody could kind of come together, and here I feel like late night television has said to half of the audience at least, thanks but no thanks, we don't need you.
Right.
And I think that's... Except
for The Tonight Show, I guess, right?
Well, it's not I don't nominated. Know. Well, that's the other thing, is I don't watch The Tonight Show because it's boring. You know, so maybe. So I don't know. This is what I think is... And part of me is thinking... I'm looking at this list and I'm thinking, just from a market opportunity, there's got to be some place for... I don't want to say a... Stephen Colbert from the right, something that's not reliably, constantly, predictably on the left. Something
didn't a show already try to do this, and it was like a huge fail. Yeah. I don't remember what that show was or even who was on it. But
well, you know what's funny? It was on Fox News, I think, and I never watched it. But now that I'm talking this through, the show that I'm thinking of is like the 2005 version of The Daily Show. because he used to go after. It used to be he'd go after the Bush administration, but just as much he would go after Tucker Carlson or just the dumbness of CNN and the way CNN reported the news.
Right.
And then I wouldn't say every once in a while, predictably, he would go off on some of the weirdnesses of the left. So he would, his targets more often than not were on the right, but he would shoot at the middle and the left and the media and the left enough. It's kind and over the years, it's kind of like the targets on the center and the left stop getting shot at, and it's all the fire is pointed in one direction, perhaps appropriately, but it doesn't make for shows that I want to watch, I guess.
Can I throw out a theory here?
Yeah.
Could it be that so many of these shows have become so aggressively political and kind of punching at the right, kind of because the right is in power right now, and like going after
definitely, yeah,
Democrats and stuff would be considered like punching down? Well,
punching
like because we talk because the comedians love to talk about the idea of punching up and punching down.
Well, that's the thing. I think that is something that's talked about on the left a lot. Punching down. One, you're right. Yes, they're the party in power.
Would it be?
So of course,
it's not really fun to be like, "Ha, Democrats, you're not in power and you can't do anything."
Well, no. Here's the thing. But I think there's a huge amount of satire, meaningful, important satire, around the question of why aren't they in power? Why did we have the choice that we have, and the country made the choice that it did? The idea that the Democrats, especially since they've been losing seat after seat in state and national legislatures, it's like 1,000 seats they've lost in the last 7 years. The fact that, almost kind of like their failure of leadership has created this vacuum that we're now unfortunately righting. And the idea that somehow you're punching down by punching some of the most powerful people in the country,
right?
I don't find convincing. I think that would be, one of the things that's interesting is, after 2012, the Republicans did this famous autopsy on their party and came out with this report about what they should do, and Trump didn't listen to any of it and went off in this crazy other direction. But when a party loses badly and loses in a time where maybe they should have won, there comes a moment of self-reflection. And Stephen Colbert or Samantha Bee, and maybe she's done this and I haven't watched enough, having that reflection and talking to your friends, and Jon Stewart did do this very well, telling the left when they were going nuts and pulling them back to sanity, is something that I think would be very valuable and is not being done at all. Punching down, I think, is a thing that, when you're pounding people that don't have power, that don't have opportunity, that don't have, meaningful power. And I think there's a lot on the left and in the Democratic Party that they got enough power to be critiqued.
Well, good news for us, because our Emmy discussion got so political, we have a really good shot next year of winning an Emmy for unstructured reality program.
That's right, baby. Unstructured. It's the best. All right.
Because we went so long, maybe we don't want to talk about any of the other things that I put down here, which is we got a new Doctor Who. Did you see that?
I did see that, a female Doctor Who, and I am just as interested as when there were male Doctor Who's, which is to say, not at all.
Oh, well, I think I might actually check an episode out. Also, I wanted to mention that Martin Landau died, which was very sad. He is a really awesome actor. That's a serious bummer. And, of course, George Romero died as well. And if you like anything zombie related, it's all thanks to him. So that was a bummer too.
If you
Way to
watch
end the show on a bummer note,
if
Sonia.
you watch The Walking Dead, and why would you, take a moment to mourn the loss of George Romero.
No, seriously though, like.
Yeah, seriously, why would you watch it?
Oh, everything zombie goes back to George Romero, and
that's true.
You know, it's too bad.
Yes.
I was sorry to hear it.
All right. Is there anything else with this long show that we would like to say?
I don't know if you thought about this, but maybe we should have brought in your friend from NorCal News to come in to talk about the Emmys because it was going to get so political.
Maybe. We'll see. You know what? I thought that was a very good, meaningful discussion. That's a very nice critique, and that's one of the reasons we love TV, because these interesting questions come up and why we're reacting to it. And when you see this list of series, you know, you and I are on the center left or left. But when you see this particular category, you know, well, here's one of the things. You know, we like diversity, right? Where is the diversity in this category?
Well, the diversity is that they actually put Samantha Bee in there because I don't think she was in there last year.
Okay, no, that's true. But is that it?
Just guys, there's a white lady in there.
That's
now.
all right. Oh yes. So the white category got a different white in there. So that's the diversity we're talking about.
Good job, Emmy voters.
All right. Wow. We could, perhaps we should revisit this discussion on a future episode.
I think we will. I'm sure we will before the Emmys.
All right. Is there anything else that you would like to say, Sonia Mansfield?
I think I've said plenty. I'll just say goodbye.
Bye! The Dorking Out Show is on Twitter at Dorking Out Show, where you can find Chris at Jet Jurgens and Sonia at The Sonia Show. You can read about Sonia's random adventures at thesoniashow.com and track the slow and creeping progress of Chris's novel and his other hijinks at jetjurgens.com. You can find out more about The Dorking Out Show at dorkingoutshow.com. While you're over there, you can support us by giving us a review on iTunes. We have a handy-dandy iTunes link to whisk you right back to 2007, where you can leave your review and 5-star rating in iTunes. We'd do it for your podcast. Want to dork out even more? Well, you can sign up for our newsletter, where you'll get all the headlines we use as fuel for the show. That's it for this week. Thanks for listening.